And we are live, I hope. Can you guys hear me? Happy Sunday, everyone. Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday. Confirm that we have sound. Hello? Do we have sound? Yes. Okay, all sound systems are live. We are going to the moon. So everyone, welcome to the Pioneer Academy this Sunday. We do this every Sunday, as you know. At this time, I will stick to the schedule, and it is more important than ever because, as you probably know, we have some huge news here on the Terafab announcement. I will actually go into that, not the entire thing. This will be multiple videos, but you guys are here. This is our little elite academy. Not many humans know about it, only the pioneers. So I will give you some first-hand thoughts on it that we will then also reutilize as a video that's coming out probably next week, probably tomorrow. So we'll cut this out of the academy, but you guys get my first take on the most important piece here. So I will do a little piece on that, and then also comment more on what Tesla boomer mama Alexander Mertz said on the merger thoughts, and I have some thoughts on that I shared. And then we have some internal news. That's part 3, and then part 4. We're going to go into the academy and the questions. So let's get this started and begin with Tesla and Elon telling us a little bit about Terafab, specifically about some very, very important pieces of the... Let me just arrange everything and then we go right into it because I want to share this video. Let's hide the chat. Top chat, top, how do I... pop out chat, boom. That's so stupid. Let's do this. Okay, anyway. So the big news is that Elon actually had a huge event. By the way, kudos to the SpaceX and XAI team for putting Elon in the middle of the scene and building a beautiful stage here. They're really making progress. This stuff is like serious. But Elon announced something that is not just world-changing, but planetary system changing. This is a huge announcement, too big to cover everything here in this part, but we are going to look at what I think is the most important piece in this whole presentation, because it gives us an insight not just into the first principle vision that we can go through in a second, but into very specific pieces of the puzzle that are much more relevant for what happens next and now. So let's listen in what Elon has to say. I'm jumping into the middle of the presentation because I want to show you something very specific.
Starship. And Starship is a critical piece of the puzzle because in order to scale compute and scale power, you have to go to space, which means that you need massive payload to space. And Starship will enable that. So this gives you sort of just a sense of scale. We've got Optimus there, Optimus for scale. And Optimus is about 5'11", so it gives you a sense of the size of the Starship V3 rocket. Starship V4 will be much longer, actually. The Starship V4 will make Starship V3 look kind of short. So we'll expand with Starship V3 to 200 tons of payload to orbit from 100 tons with V3. And then you can see that that's just a rough approximation of the AI, the mini version of the AI sat. So that's roughly 100 kilowatts. It's showing the solar panels and the radiator to scale. So for some reason, there's been a bizarre debate about radiators in space. It's safe to say SpaceX knows how to do heat rejection in space with 10,000 satellites in orbit. Might know a thing or two. So you can see the radiator is actually quite small relative to the solar panels. And we call that the mini-sat, since that's just 100 kilowatts. We expect future satellites to probably go to the megawatt range. Yeah. So in order to get to the terawatt of compute per year, you need about 10 million tons to orbit per year and at 100 kilowatts per ton. So we're confident this is feasible. Like no new physics or impossible things are required to get there. So I'm confident actually that SpaceX will get to 10 million tons to orbit per year. And then we're building up to a terawatt of solar. So that solves will solve the solar problem, the power generation. So then the key missing ingredient is therefore a terawatt of compute. So
okay, we stop it here because this is what I wanted to focus on. This video is not about covering Terafab itself. I will comment on that. But the most important piece of the equation is not manufacturing chips. That comes downstream of something else. And that something else is Starship and the ability to transport a lot of stuff to orbit cheaply, and then the architecture of the famous AI satellite. And Elon said some extremely important things if you really listened closely to what he said. And this is very, very important because here's my take on it. If you are an Elon fan, if you are a SpaceX and Tesla fan, and Elon presents a first principle pitch like this, we could basically create Kardashev 2 civilization. We can surround the sun with so much satellites that capture all the energy that we capture all the energy in the solar system. If you hear that and you're a geek and you're a Tesla fan, Elon fan, you say, this is the most amazing plan I've ever heard. But that's pie in the sky, like literally. I believe in it, it's amazing. But then we have the Wall Street analysts right on the other side and us as also tactical investors. And we have to say, well, but how do we get from here to there? And that's exactly where Pioneer Alpha lives, where I am focused on. I'm focused not on the present and not on the distant future, but on the close vicinity future between the big goals that we need to understand and the current state of things. And that means we need to figure out, when is this stuff actually becoming real? When is it becoming real? Not when it is completely real, when we are Kardashev 2, that's going to take a long time. But when do we make this all decisive leap from where we are now to the trajectory, the real cash flow trajectory into that new world? Because that question is everything that counts. If the answer to that question is in 2035, that doesn't make me very excited as an investor. But if we say that future, where we start seeing scaled AI satellites in orbit, if that future is in 2028 or 2027, everything changes because that's not priced into anything. So we need to determine what is actually true here. What is that time scale? And Elon in this presentation revealed some amazing, I'll share another here, Sawyer Merritt focused on that chart. And that is exactly the chart we actually have to focus on here. This chart tells us a lot. For the first time ever, do we see a small depiction, a conceptual depiction of the AI satellite Mini, 100 kilowatts. That's an enormous data center, by the way, 100 kilowatts, just to be clear. That's a tenth of a gigawatt. It's enormous. So this gives away a lot of things. I modeled this out, I think in November or December last year, when this first became a thing. I did quick back of the napkin math with a lot of leeway and margin built in, which means my solar panels are bigger than Elon's here, and my radiators are bigger, but not that much bigger, actually. So I was close, and I purposeful, and by the way, I'm not an engineer. I just asked AI, a bunch of AIs, did some math to determine if this is all feasible. Mine is probably 3 to 4 times bigger for the same 100 kilowatt. More like 2 to 3 times maybe bigger. And the radiators are probably 5 times bigger on my sketch. That's very good news because I determined this is very feasible already. And I built in that margin. Not that because I'm so smart and I knew the truth. It's more because I did back of the napkin math and said, okay, what's the reasonable worst case? Now that Elon comes out with that, we see that the radiators are actually much smaller than the solar panels. I had them, I think, at half the size, but that's more like a fourth or fifth of the size. So this is very feasible. It's much more easy than I thought. Because it's all about how big do these panels and the radius have to be for a 100 kilowatt data center. We also now know that 100 kilowatts is probably a good, reasonable middle ground scale size for the satellites. And we have to be very obsessed with the question, what is that exact first prototype, first iteration of these AI satellites? Because it's the all-decisive question. Technically, there are two all-decisive questions here. And again, I'm asking these questions because I'm focused on the next 12 to 24 months. And the question, do we see any substantive scale in that time frame? Because the market would say no way. But I think we will, because there are two inflection point trajectories here for space AI. Number one, the satellites. Jensen, in the GTC conversations, he kind of implied that this is a little complicated, especially because of the radiators and because of the question, how do you cool very large data centers in space? That this is a kind of an unsolved problem. I had the suspicion that Jensen just doesn't know too much about it, because I looked at other stuff and saw people have solved it. But now Elon came out and made very clear, probably in indirect response to Jensen, that it's absolutely no problem for SpaceX. He basically said it's a trivial problem in the presentation. He said, we really understand how we do that. We already do it with the Starlink satellites. So as I predicted, absolutely not a problem. This is a very small scale problem for SpaceX to solve the radiator question. Quick side note, by the way, in case you don't know what I'm talking about, in space, you don't have any kind of convection. You don't have air, you have vacuum, which means cooling is actually very hard, even though you have close to zero Kelvin, centigrade Kelvin. So it's very cold, but you have vacuum, so you can't just easily cool stuff. You have to use radiation, which is like a physics formula for it, how you radiate heat out through aluminum panels or whatever. And so that is now also clearly solved. So back to my two big trajectories that are these inflection points. The first question, to make space really happen, to unlock this infinite economy, the infinite economy of putting AI and intelligence into space. It's infinite because you have infinite energy compared to Earth, at least, that you can capture with solar panels. The economics I did in December and showed everyone this is extremely hot. Solar flux is 5x higher than on Earth. So you get 5 times, 500% more energy per solar square meter than on Earth, because 24/7 light plus higher flux. And the radiators make cooling for free once you have it up there. So very, very attractive. That is the first piece of the equation. When are these AI satellites ready to scale? I think this is a minute innovation. It's a small innovation challenge, which I would give it 12 to 18 months before these things are hugely scalably available, assuming the chips are ready and everything else, but as a pure technology. Not like some unknown time in the future. I think this is extremely doable within the next 12 months. Give it 6 months buffer, next 18 months. Which leads me to the second important inflection point variable here needed for scaled AI compute, which is Starship. To boil it down to the economic inflection point, we need to bring cost to orbit of a kilogram of mass below $200. That is my inflection point. Elon always talks about $10, but he's just overdoing it. I know Elon has to think about these things because he has to get to $10 in 2030s at some point. I don't care about that. The inflection point is $200 per kilogram. Falcon is between 2,000 and 2,500 right now. So the cheapest orbital lift price or cost we have is $2,000 roughly, 2,500 to 2,000. So the question is, when is Starship ready to commercially do this stuff and re-land and reuse itself to get that cost below $200 per kilogram? And when these two curves, these two trajectories of innovation meet, When Starship can deliver $200 per kilogram to orbit, and when the AI satellites are ready, all hell breaks loose. People are not aware of what that means. And guys, I tell you, this makes me so much more excited than like life on Mars or moon bases or Kardashev scale stuff, because this is for me all blah, blah. It's in the future. Of course, it's smart of Elon to think about these things and prepare it, otherwise it wouldn't happen. But the really exciting things for us as Pioneer Alpha chasers, if people who want to actually see results in a reasonable amount of time, is to determine when these tactical inflection points actually happen. And the difference between them happening in 6 months versus 12 months versus 18 months versus 24 versus 36 months is the difference between infinite riches and going broke. It's very dramatic if you're in the market. So that is what we are always focused on. We are focused on strategic first principle innovation, of course. Of course, we need to understand Kardashev scale things. Of course, we have to understand Dyson swarms. Of course, we have to understand terafabs. But it's easy to understand. That's not hard. The hard part is to put it on a timeline and say, is this stuff hot in December this year or December next year or December 2028? That's where the money is. And when I look at this stuff, I think the market is not aware of what's really happening. The market is not aware that this insane future that Elon is talking about will be triggered and kicked off very soon at scale with massive cash flows. And it's the only business model, by the way, different from FSD and Robotaxi, different from Optimus even. This is the only business model that truly scales straight into infinity. Get this, Wall Street analysts. Now it blows their mind. Now they think we're all crazy. But it scales straight into infinity because it's a business model that just captures energy, turns it into intelligence, and that's it. And super clean, it's super lean, it does nothing else, and there's infinite value here. So it's quite exciting to say the least. But as I said, what's even more exciting is now we get a first glimpse into the actual tactical planning of SpaceX. And I told everyone, this is actually much easier than FSD and Robotaxi. It's also much easier than Optimus. It's even easier than EVs, if you ask me. Not because it's objectively easy, not because I could just do it, but because the only truly difficult and hard part of this whole thing is Starship. But Starship is also the most advanced. Starship is more or less a done deal. I think the remaining innovation required for Starship is actually vastly more complex than the satellite. But we are also 90%, 95% through with Starship. So I think the gating function here is not the satellite. The satellite will be much easier than anyone thinks right now. And Starship is kind of the little bit the tricky part. When are we ready with Starship? But the schedule is very clear. April is the next or first V3 launch. I don't know if V3 is the breakthrough or V4, but I think it will happen before the end of 2027. We will get Starship ready. And if that's true, it's such a big deal, I can't even put it into words. And now that thing, the blueprint of the AI satellites combined with Starship orbital lift capability, that is the platform and the scaling function on that we then can put Terafab. Terafab only makes sense once these things work, because only then do you have infinite demand for chips. And only then can Terafab truly put the supplies out. So if we aim Terafab being ready in 4 years or something, it all works out pretty nicely. This stuff is ready in 2 years, latest. It then can scale for 2 years with NVDA and some other basic stuff, maybe AI5, AI6, before we actually need Terafab. I mean, once it starts scaling, it doesn't mean it scales like from 0 to Kardashev 2 in a month. It's still going to have lots of little kinks and problems, but that doesn't matter. So that's my take. That's why I found this so exciting, and I hope you find it exciting too. Okay, that's that. Let's wrap it up here for this video, and let's go to your questions. So that's how we do it here, by the way, for you guys. I'm doing this. We cut it out as a video. It will be then an extra video. Now I can address some questions here. Hi from Ottawa. We have Canadians on board. Boca Raton, beautiful. Florida. Keep buying the Tesla dip. Sure, I will go into my trading strategy in a second. Important tweet from Elon about next 3 months. I didn't see I don't know what about the next 3 months. Are Wall Street gonna run in terror from the Terafab? My take on Wall Street is they don't give a crap. They will say, whatever, dude, we don't care. Who cares about Terafab? I mean, for Wall Street, this is a complete no news, in my opinion. It has no impact. It's like, sure, another crazy Elon idea. That's what they are going to say. It has no impact, in my opinion. They already knew he's going to do something like this. You are the only real Tesla analyst I know who thinks exactly like myself. By the way, Grüße aus Österreich. Thank you. I feel honored. The Austrians are always the smarter Germans. I'm allowed to say it as a German. I wonder how you service this AI platform and the hardware failure rate. Well, that's one of the big questions, but the key is, Jerdobi, the key here is that you want to build it in a way where servicing is not that important, right? You just have certain failure rates, and then from time to time you service it. I don't think you want to service this too much. It needs to be pretty robust. And robustness means if you just have a bunch of these things failing, bunch of chips, it shouldn't matter, right? You have to be able to compensate for that. Next Starship launch not scheduled, but possibly within a month. I think isn't it scheduled for first half of April? I'm not up to the latest if they push that. Elon Mind looks in the rear view mirror that says objects look closer than they really are. Talk about 3 years when it ends up 3 to 5 x more time. I don't think it's 3 to 5 times more time. It might be 5 or 6 years. Terafab is the hardest part for this AI set mini when Starship is almost done. Well, I disagree that Terafab is needed. It's definitely not needed for the AI satellite. I'm very, very sure they will build AI satellites before Terafab. But it's needed for scale, of course. How will Elon fund Terafab like 40 billion cost partly? Well, it's a big question. They have 40 billion on the balance sheet. They are spending 20 billion of it this year, but probably not just from the balance sheet. They can definitely get more. Well, that's Tesla, by the way. They can definitely get some debt, not too hard. Maybe they're gonna issue more shares. Who knows? And then, of course, no one knows what's happening with Robotaxi. You know my prediction that it's gonna happen in May. But I'm scared. Of course, I'm nervous. Jacksonville, Florida. Hi, Philip. What do you think of above? I'm not sure how the data source works, but seems rollout is not going as quick as we would like. Richard, I don't know which one you mean above, like Robotaxi. I also want to talk about another thing. Just have to find the tweet. He replied a tweet from Omar saying market does not understand the next 3 months. Yeah, that's very vague, but yeah. Well, Omar said market doesn't understand the next 3 months. And then Elon said, I told everyone, but they're not listening or something like this. So he didn't explicitly say 3 months. He just responded to the 3 months tweet of Omar. But yeah, I do think a lot of things will happen. Where is that tweet I wanted to cover here from Alexandra about the merger? SpaceX merger. Gary Black saying things that I don't agree with. Again, of course. I wanted to cover this. That's my own tweet. I can't find it right now. Well, I will maybe just use my own tweet then. Here. Okay, let's do this. Let's share my tweet. I have a video here. One of the most important things that people are debating is the SpaceX and Tesla merger. There's a lot of rumors about it, and people are very excited. Some are nervous, some hate it, some love it. I want to take a perspective here that is very important for a lot of Tesla investors who follow my strategy of sometimes putting on a lot of leaps, no pun intended, because they're calls. Leaps are call options that are long running, for on Tesla, because we're betting on Tesla going to the moon at some point in the next 12 months, 18 months. And the advantage of leap options is if Tesla trades at 300, whatever it is, 70, right now you can buy a leap option out of the money, let's say 500 strike price, get it relatively cheap, even though it's pretty expensive. Buy it with an expiration date of end of next year, for example, December 2027, and have a lot of time. If you pay 60, 80 bucks for that, you break even at 580. So everything above 580 gives you a huge multiple compared to holding shares. And you do that, or I do it, when Tesla drops too much, I'm out of capital, I roll stocks into leaps, and that normally works very well. If you have enough time, that's why it's leaps. You take a lot of time, right, to keep them, because you can never predict short-term market moves, but long-term, there's a lot of forcing functions that would drive Tesla much higher than it is now, in my opinion, at least. Now, why is this so important? Tesla boomer mama, Alexandra Mertz, who is one of the most sophisticated insiders, kind of, I shouldn't say insiders, but someone who really understands, well, the legal part of things and also the shareholder vote behavior and the board behavior of Tesla and potentially also of SpaceX. She had an interesting commentary on the most likely SpaceX Tesla merger timeline. And what she said in a nutshell is it could happen this year. It could happen. There's a theoretic chance, and she outlined the process, Tesla shareholder approval and all these things. But she said it's unlikely, because very likely the regulators will have a say in it. And regulators reviewing a giant merger like this take 12 to 24 months. And of course, Tesla is not allowed to merge if the regulators are not allowing it. So the bottom line is we don't know exactly, but there is a tail risk that it's faster than we think. Why is this even important? Well, let me read my tweet where I basically described a very important problem. And if you know something or have other types of option contracts, let me know in the comments, or if you disagree with some speculation I have here, how these are being treated in terms of a merger. But this is a very important insight if you are a long-term call option holder, because there is some real risk here. So let's read it. There is, in my opinion, a low double-digit % probability that Tesla and SpaceX merge this year. And this is because of Alexandra Mertz and her assessment, which I agree with. It is unlikely, but there's still double digits, like 10, 15% chance it actually happens this year, which is non-trivial. If Tesla would turn into SpaceX, right, it's a merger. One stock gets acquired by the other stock, but we don't know which one. That's another speculation we can have. Is Tesla going to acquire SpaceX, or is SpaceX going to acquire Tesla? Non-trivial question for options holders. So if Tesla would turn into SpaceX, right, if SpaceX acquires Tesla and Tesla stocks disappear, and you hold leaps above the acquisition merger price, you lose your capital, right? We have to understand that. So what happens if SpaceX buys, for example, well, I'll give you an example here in the post. So if you have far out of the money calls for 2027, right? Let's say December 2027. And let's say you picked a high strike price, like 800, which is not a crazy thing to do, in my opinion. I'm pretty confident, like extremely confident, actually, that Tesla will be over 800. by end of 2027. Not a guarantee, of course, but that's what I would definitely be betting on. And the acquisition happens at 700, you just lose. Because what normally happens in a merger, when a company gets acquired, these options accelerate. So if your company, where you have a call option on 800, gets acquired for 700 before the expiration, normally you accelerate the expiration date and you get paid out whatever you are owed based on the option. But if your strike price is 800 and you get acquired at 700, you lose. You are out of, you're dead. You get zero. So that is a real risk. Because even if Tesla gets a significant premium at the acquisition, it's not going to get 800 if it's at 400, right? If, on the other hand, Tesla acquires SpaceX, so Tesla, SpaceX stock, also public, and Tesla acquires SpaceX, that should not matter too much. Because that just means a massive share dilution of Tesla. Tesla would basically issue tons of shares, like a lot of shares, to kind of acquire SpaceX, because now you have to give Tesla shares to all the SpaceX shareholders. You exchange SpaceX shares with Tesla. Tesla shareholders wouldn't even, notice it too much. That doesn't, massive share dilution, by the way, doesn't mean a drop in share price necessarily. It depends how the market views this whole thing. Could even go up, maybe. But it's a massive expansion of outstanding shares with no impact on the options, at least to my knowledge, in my assessment. In this case, you should be fine, assuming after that Tesla continues to go up and doesn't get dragged down, right? So this is a different risk. If Tesla eats up SpaceX, and let's say SpaceX has a hard time scaling into massive amounts of cash flow, massive meaning similar to Tesla, we don't know how the market judges this whole thing. And that's another concern Tesla shareholders have, that an acquisition of SpaceX would potentially drag out this inflection point. Because now you carry a massive weight. You're going from a $1.5 trillion company to a $3 trillion company or more, $3.5 trillion company, but adding only small amounts of cash flow because SpaceX has much less cash flow than Tesla. Of course, you're doing so in exchange for massive future cash flow where SpaceX could easily overtake Tesla. But that's pie in the sky again. So we don't know how the market is going to react to that. Many concerns here. Of course, I am more bullish on SpaceX than I am on Tesla. And that is not because I'm not extremely bullish on Tesla, but because SpaceX is just ridiculous. Like that plan with SpaceX is just crazy. It's insane. Not because Elon is crazy, but because of the exact opposite, because Elon is extremely not crazy. Elon spotted a glitch in the matrix, let's face it. Elon spotted that we can build a Dyson sphere. Like people don't totally understand. It's like millions of times the size of the human economy. And it's profitable from day one. So you're opening up a TAM that is millions of times larger than the entire human economy. Millions of times. But it's also not requiring any significant investments because it's cash flow positive from day one. It's literally a glitch in the matrix. It's absolutely nuts. And the whole thing is probably one of the easiest things Elon has ever done. So it's a triple glitch. Infinite TAM, instant cash flow positivity, and easier than EVs, easier than FSD, easier than Optimus, and definitely easier than Starship. That is how I see it. That's just nuts what's happening. It's just the ultimate opportunity. Why is this all happening? Because of AI. That is the randomness that has nothing to do or not much to do with Elon, that we are in this AI trajectory. AI unlocks the Dyson sphere. Plus, of course, Starship. That's also a great coincidence that Elon is just ready to deploy Starship, hopefully. So it's just ridiculous. This is like an enormous thing. I mean, enormous is not even cutting it. You guys understand what I mean. So that is how I see it. So besides this crazy, crazy story we just covered in a different video, the AI satellites and SpaceX story, that's a very tactical take on the options. And it's very, very important for all of us who actually have leaps. I do think This is a risk that I don't want to take. Because normally when let's say Iran escalates even more, which could be, and let's say Tesla drops below 300, which absolutely could happen, by the way. Different video, but this can absolutely happen in the next couple of months. Not because Tesla has any problems. Well, if Tesla has on top of it robotaxi problems, it could drop more. But it could just drop under 300 because of a market crash, which is absolutely in the cards if this stuff continues. So let's assume that happens. I would go all in into leaps, into very out of the money leaps. Like I made the most money with my $700 and $600 leaps back last year when it went down to 220. And I bought a lot of leaps. I wrote over 50% of my entire stock portfolio into Tesla leaps. That's why I outperformed so much last year. But I would not do that in this situation. I'm still fine with buying leaps, but not that much out of the money and definitely not that much of my portfolio because of that tail risk. I don't want to have a 15 or 10% chance of losing all my money because of a merger. So it is non-trivial, this inside here. I would be willing to lose, 5% of my money or something because it's unlikely to happen, but not that amount of money I put in back then. So we have to keep that in mind when we play with leaps. Obviously, your risk for the leaps goes down with a lower strike price. If Tesla is at 300, let's say 350, and you buy a 400 or 450 strike price, that's pretty safe because you're very likely going to be in the money if the merger happens. So I would say it's a small chance that you get into trouble. But if you get into trouble because the merger happens exactly that way and at a surprise speed, you just get knocked out. That's the problem. So sometimes we have to cover options and these risks. I hope that was helpful. And see you next time. So you guys, sorry if not next, don't leave. I'm just doing that because we're cutting it out into a different video. So let's see what the comments here say. More Grüße aus Österreich. Very good. Jacksonville. Omar. Robotaxi tracker. If you look at active vehicles, it's not increasing. Why is it not increasing? Wanted to hear your thoughts. Isn't active vehicles a more accurate number on what fleet of robotaxis? I don't think so, Richard. We see a lot of increase with deployment. And of course, it's not the same as active vehicles. The robotaxi tracker is not the most reliable piece of information. It gives us just a directional idea. But if I look at Elon and how everyone behaves at Tesla, they're not even talking about that stuff. But everyone knows it's absolutely necessary to happen. And they're going full speed ahead with CyberCab. So I will keep sticking to my prediction. April, May, something big is going to happen. Of course, I can be wrong. You have to be clear about that. I'm very clear about that. But still, when I look at the probabilities and everything that's happening, I think we are still on track. The most likely outcome is something big is going to happen. Regarding CyberCab and the various projections regarding profitability, I'm concerned regarding flooding of the market in a small area. I'm not too concerned about that. I'm only concerned about robotaxi working or not. If robotaxi works, I think this is just going to be crazy what's going to happen. So the main risk is not anything downstream of that. The main risk is that for some reason it just doesn't work now or it's delayed. That would be bad for the stock. The options would convert to the new entity. You only go to zero if it's a cash buyout. Well, Fres, that's interesting. I'm actually not sure. This is a very important question. So if you guys want to do more research or find the actual contract terms, I would be very cautious. I think, this is actually difficult to figure out. And it's also tricky to even maybe go to actually confirm that because this is about a lot of money. So it would be great if you guys can know anything or can do more research, if you can actually nail down this question and actually get the concise, concrete answer. What happens if SpaceX acquires Tesla and Tesla disappears? I don't think that you are getting converted into the new entity. But it could be, who knows? So we should figure that out. Hi, Joe. You have given some interesting predictions on the outcome of the Iran conflict. Based on most recent news, what is your updated projection for the end result and timing? I'm doing a separate video on that because I'm preparing some scenarios, but I can give you the quick rundown on Iran. I was wrong on Taco. I predicted, and by the way, I'm finding out more and more that most of Wall Street was totally on my page. Everyone thought the same thing, actually, with the institutions. They all thought Trump's gonna Taco. Trump is gonna just stop it and declare victory. The problem is, and some people still say, well, that's still his plan. The problem is we are now so deep in it that Trump has lost the option to do that, in my opinion, because Iran is not going to allow him to do it anymore. And they're too deeply entrenched. So now, not just that Trump maybe doesn't even want to do it, but even if he wanted to, it's getting increasingly difficult. So the odds of a quick end have drastically been reduced. Then the next question is, if the United States goes all in and really wants to whatever they want, what is the odds of Iran capitulating? I would put this even lower than Trump doing a taco at this point, because why would they capitulate? So that's not going to happen. Or we have to think in probabilities. I think a taco is now significantly below 50%, probably 30, 25%. I think Iran capitulating or breaking down anytime soon is like probably 5%. So that leaves me with like a 65 to 70% chance that this escalates. I do not think this is priced into the market, because if it does, we see oil prices above 120, 130 for a long time, and we see all kinds of stuff. I do think, if I'm totally cold-blooded about it, I do think that's the most likely scenario. We see an escalation. And that means this is not going to end anytime soon, probably not even this year. I mean, that's at least now really in the cards. And even if that's only a 20% chance, that wasn't a 20% chance 2 weeks ago. So once the market recognizes that too, which can happen now very quickly, once the market gets to the same conclusion that I do, let's assume it comes to the same conclusion, that this is way out of control and could way escalate, way more than I thought before, the most likely thing that happens is a market crash. And that could happen next week, actually. It happens at the moment where the market reprices the risk and says, this could actually escalate. We do not have the taco premium. We always had the taco premium, that the entire market was like, yeah, sure, Trump's going to taco. Regardless if he does it or not, this premium is now going out of the window. And once the market takes it out of the window, we could see a crash. But what does a crash mean? A crash means 5, 10, 15, 20% crash of the market. I don't know which of these, but something significant between 5 and 20, I would say. 20 is unlikely, but could happen. And that means for Tesla, I mean, total destruction, of course. If the NASDAQ crashes 20%, Tesla crashes like 40 or maybe 30%, because Tesla still is very bullish. I think people tend to be bullish. So NASDAQ down 20% would mean Tesla between, let's say, 25 and 40% down, just because. Once that crash happens, that crash would happen very rapidly, because that's how crashes happen, because the market wants to always reprice as quickly as possible. Then we are in war territory. Stock markets throughout war tend to rise. They tend to slowly rise throughout the war. That's just historically what it is. So normally you see like rapid crash, and then boom, 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 we go up. So that is actually the most likely scenario. Emotionally, I think I still don't want to believe it. I think like, no, Trump is just going to stop it. But if you're totally rational about it, that's how I see it. Because if he wanted to stop it, he would have stopped it by now. And it could be very bad. And don't waste your mind, by the way, on like, why is he doing it? Who's behind it? Blah, blah. Like, no one knows. No one cares. The facts are, this equation is shifting. So that's my take on it. Even though no one wants to hear it, I don't want to hear it. But that's why I de-risked a little bit, and I might de-risk more next week, even if it goes up. Even if Trump pretends he wants to end it or something, depending what the details are. So I am preparing for this could get very nasty very quickly on the market side. Just my take. Okay, continue. Options only go for 2-0. The future is space, yes. Should be the biggest industry at some point, yes. And sooner than we think, Philip. How do the components of a Dyson sphere communicate with each other and the Earth? Delays would be enormous. Well, in the beginning, the Dyson sphere, you have to think about how a Dyson sphere looks like. It surrounds the sun as a sphere, but it starts with, you have to start it somewhere. You start it around Earth. And you expand it a little bit from Earth. You then maybe span it to the moon or something. Or no, not to the moon. Like you start building the sphere. So it takes a very long time before you're using lasers to connect it. So you're very fast as long as you keep it within like a reasonable distance of Earth. But then long term, you don't need to have super fast communication because the intelligence that's being, first of all, you're in deep space. Humans are in deep space. You need intelligence all over the place if you are in deep space. So you just deliver intelligence wherever humans are. And then you will have tasks that just take a long time, right? You can just outsource. I mean, now we are getting really sci-fi because before we have these will take many decades before you run into these problems, because you can build out extremely ridiculously enormous amounts of intelligence very close to Earth. But at that point, you will have distributed intelligence. You will have tasks that take years to complete, intelligence tasks. So you don't need to communicate. You just, take 6 minutes to communicate, I think, around the sun. So it's not it's not too long. And you just outsource tasks where the agents think longer, like further out. I don't think there's any problem there. If SpaceX take over Tesla, one possible outcome on Tesla Leap options is that they will be adjusted to SpaceX option with different, I know, like we have to look into that, how this works. I don't think that's the normal procedure, but maybe. Yeah, we have to do some research on options and mergers, what the scenarios are, and then more importantly, how is this normally handled? Do we have to look at the options contracts, what the specific contracts actually say? Or is that something the board has to actually decide? Dr. Fischkapisch, hi, you're good to see you, I assume. Yes, thank you. Good to see you too. If it's stock for stock, OTM options get converted to the new entity based on the ratio of the deal. Really? But is that so, Fraz? I don't know if that's like, it would be nice, but I am not sure that this is the case. I'm not sure this is the case. In a normal acquisition, at least, I do really not think that's the case. Right? If you are a random small publicly traded company and you have call options on this thing at $10 and this thing gets acquired for $6, your options are not being converted into this new thing, in my opinion. This is also extremely complicated math, like all kinds of legal issues. You're betting on the stock being at that price in the future, and it's just not at that price. It's a bet. I think you get screwed. That's what I think. But Fraz, we have to it would be very interesting to actually drill that down, not just in general, but in principle, but for Tesla. I think that by the end of 2027, Tesla has 100% of all from rideshare in the USA. I think if they scale, it could be big. The option to change concerts, the options in a stock for stock deal. I was worried about this exact problem, so I did some deep dive with Grok. I would really like to have a lawyer on this to actually have confirmation for these specific Tesla shares, stock options. Okay, so this is the situation. Very interesting stuff. You can take another look at those. Amazing chart. This chart will go down in history, I tell you guys. This is for me so enlightening that I see this AI satellite mini design of SpaceX. This is so huge. We are building, by the way, a research team. I can show you more what's happening here on Pioneer Alpha. Pioneer Alpha is also coming in around nicely. Very soon, I will not be able to say anymore I'm a retail investor because I will be an institutional investor because of Pioneer Alpha, which is fun. But I can show you one. By the way, if you see anything on the screen that is a solicitation for securities, this is only for US investors, and this is not directed at anyone outside the United States, just as a full disclaimer. So very important. But I don't want to go into that. Here's Pioneer Alpha. If you go in research, we have an update on the research strategy of Pioneer Alpha. I just want to share this with you guys so you are the first to see the updated situation. We are actually building out a research team that will go straight, some of it at least, straight into the channel. And of course, here, Pioneer Academy on Sunday, you will always get the first and newest, but I'm working with a university, still undisclosed, but it's in Northern Europe, in the beautiful, icy north, not that icy. And we're building out a very cool team. And here's how it works. Pioneer Alpha research, 5 themes, 1 future. I designed this page, by the way, with Lovable. I have to do it myself. I have a little bit of help, but. And the theory is very simple. We have 5 big themes plus macro. And the 5 big themes, you know about the themes, but we are now really putting teams on this. And for each theme, I have a very specific take on research, as you guys know. I'm all about timelines. Because what I don't like is all these people doing random research and doing TAMs and stuff. Like, I don't like it. We need a big picture timeline on each theme. And I don't know how much we can actually share the timeline in detail, but the more you're involved with Pioneer Lands and Pioneer Alpha, investors in Pioneer Alpha, of course, will get firsthand, citizens will get secondhand, and everyone else get, and members third hand, and YouTube fourth hand, because we have to stack it a little bit and can't tell you all the details because now it gets very, very specific with trading strategies. But I will be able to share still more than you hear anywhere else. And here are the 5 themes. The first one is, of course, artificial intelligence at large. So that includes everything from semiconductors, Micron Technologies, NVDA, AMD, hyperscalers, Mac 7, Google, and so on, Anthropic, OpenAI. Of course, XAI and Tesla is always part of it. So that is the big question. How does artificial intelligence actually develop over the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 24, 36, and 5 year? What exactly do we predict is going to happen? Job loss, white collar takeover, Anthropic, Amazon, this kind of stuff, hyperscale, the entire AI core narrative and core capabilities, agent, OpenClaw, NemoClaw, and put this all on a specific timeline and then have the analytics and the research for each stock that is relevant. We are not going to go into every stock. We are, of course, focusing on our favorites, which is probably NVIDIA, AMD, Amazon, Micron Technologies, of course, Tesla. Tesla's all over the place for all these themes. Google, in case I didn't mention it. And we will dig deep into that. The next one is autonomous transport. This is all about robotaxi. By the way, this is not just going to be research. We are also going to include you guys, especially citizens, but also members of Pioneer Lands. So the goal here is not just to have research, but also apps that share that research and allow everyone to participate in the sense of putting in your own targets, stock targets, seeing other people's stock targets, if you put them in, and then also key drivers, for example, robotaxi. What is your estimate how many robotaxis fully autonomously are being deployed, for example? For autonomous transport, it's very clear what we are going to do. For humanoid robots, it's also very clear. For space, it's a little clear. For AI, it's not clear yet. So it's going to be very interesting. And here, of course, it's all about Tesla. It's a little bit about NVIDIA, Google, Waymo, Uber, and Robotaxi Cybercab. So this will be very focused. And it's all about not just doing one-off research. We want to have real-time research week by week, because Pioneer Alpha, our trading advantage, will be all about truly understanding the long-term and truly understanding the tactical next 3 months, next 6 months, next 12 months. because I know from my own experience, mostly through the option strategies, timing this right. It's not market timing, it's reality timing. I'm not timing the market, I'm timing technology. And that actually works. And that is huge. The next theme, number 3, is of course humanoid robots. I don't have to tell you guys anything about it. It's Optimus, and there's all the other guys. Hyundai, of course, very big. Google is developing the operating system, and NVDA too. Figure 1, 1X Technologies, XPeng. But our favorite, of course, in the middle of it, the leader, Tesla. Again, here we want to understand the exact inflection points of the robots, the exact insights into what is actually happening, scaling, mostly scaling. That will be the app here for you guys to put in your estimations, how many Optimus and when. And also when we have demos, also what the other people do. Then my actual total favorite, the space economy. We covered it already. I love this stuff. It's just this, I tell you guys, this and robotaxi. AI is like a very complicated, very big theme, right? I'm very bullish that Pioneer Alpha will be the leader in the world very soon in number 2, autonomous transport research, and definitely 1,000,000% in number 4. In Optimus, I admit, we have an uphill battle. I think there are tons of people out there who are right now better than I am in humanoid robot research. So we need to figure out how we, claw our way up there to be one of the best. And AI is a super complicated field because it's so broad and giant. But I think the research generally sucks in the investment space on AI. It's just ridiculously bad. So I don't think it's too difficult to get good here. I think in autonomous transport, we will be the number 1. I think in humanoid robots, it's going to be very tough. I think in space, we are by default the number 1. I was already the number 1 in December. Like, I love this stuff, and I think no one gets it. And all the investors are like not even on it, in my opinion. So that's my favorite. Number 5, AGI Capital. That's a specific thing. That's just because that's Pioneer Alpha and Pioneer Reserve, what I'm building, but also some of the coolest companies. I think this theme is so important because this is about the huge shift from labor to capital. All the jobs go away. The only job of the future is investing. I'm not the only one saying this. A lot of millions of people wake up to it, and that drives certain things. It drives blockchain. It drives Ethereum as the new rails of the financial system for all kinds of reasons. Ethereum is needed for an AI-defined financial infrastructure. Bitcoin, anyways, MicroStrategy and treasury companies, right? This is the first big thing. Blockchain, MicroStrategy, Bitcoin, Ethereum. But it continues with different topics. Coinbase, Robinhood, huge stuff. They are basically creating the consumer-facing operating system for investments. These people are huge. I'm more bullish on Robinhood, of course, but Coinbase, I would not underestimate them. Huge, huge stuff. I'm mega bullish on these companies. It's another thing about valuation and stock price, right? We have to see, but very interesting. In Bitcoin and MicroStrategy and Ethereum, it's just a very nice orthogonal diversification from Tesla and that whole topic because they're truly orthogonal. These are very different worlds and very different things, which sometimes is good. And then finally, I didn't call it number 6 because it's not a theme. Oh, by the way, we are also going to be pretty good in AGI Capital, in my opinion, because it's a new theme we define. So, of course, there are tons of crypto researchers. There are tons of financial fintech researchers that are very good. But I think the specific angle, Pioneer Alpha can also be a leader. And then macro global framework, obviously here we have little chance of leading anything because it's a giant hedge fund industry and a giant industry with like tons of the most intelligent investors that I've ever met were all macro investors. So I'm not going to say we are going to be smarter than David Tepper or, all these famous people. But it's just bread and butter. We need to be good at macro. I love it when people tell me on X like, oh, Joe, stay in your lane. Don't talk about Iran. Like, bro, are you stupid? Like, I'm not doing this to have some political opinion. You need to understand macro and you need to predict macro if you want to do any kind of trading, right? If you want to do any kind of repositioning in your portfolio, because you can't just ignore a giant implosion of global markets. That would be not smart. You can't just say, oh, I just am interested in Tesla. If you're a buy and hold investor, that's fine. You don't need to understand macro if you're a 5-year investor. But if you want to generate any tactical alpha and you ignore macro, that's not good. So macro is not an ambition that we want to be a leader globally because the competition is enormous. The smartest investors are in macro. We just need to have it as bread and butter. So we are not doing anything stupid. And in geopolitics, I'm not that bad, actually. I'm better in politics than actual financial macro relative to the other people, because there they kill me. Of course, there are people that are so smart about commodities, currencies, Fed and economics and liquidity. I mean, you have very smart people there. So we just watch them and we consolidated. I think geopolitics, I'm not that bad. But this is not an ambition to really lead the world. We just need to do it, otherwise we fail. So I just want to show you these guys, these things. Let's see what we have for questions. Here, Dr. Fish. Is Pioneer Alpha mostly a financial product? So Pioneer Alpha is basically my trading strategy, and we are now converting that in the United States into, yes, a new investment product that basically is designed, not promising, but it's designed to capture the upside of AGI and funnel it into a more robust and reliable return channel. So you see this channel, this is actually the historic simulated performance based on the real portfolio, based on that new structure. And you see it works pretty well to keep the returns inside this channel. And the channel is pretty attractive if it works, because it's the lower end of the channel is 30% a year and the upper level is 45% a year. And the way it works is if the underlying portfolio exceeds the upper limits, it goes into a buffer. And that buffer then feeds the reserve, feeds Pioneer Alpha. There's an underlying bond in Luxembourg for that. It feeds it back. So if I lose money or if the portfolio goes down, you still make money if the buffer is positive. And that's why do we do this? It's not a fund. And there will be a dedicated video on this for the website, hopefully tomorrow. The whole point is that what I believe has to happen, that's how I built this thing and why. What I believe has to happen in the world is, in this new world where everyone needs to become an investor because otherwise people are totally screwed, how do we deliver very high returns to everyone in a more reliable way that is income generating than what's happening with Tesla stock? So I call it the wife test. It's the wife test because I talked to so many Tesla investors. There's a wife test. There you have the guy, and the guy's like, oh, I just mortgaged the house. I put it all in Tesla shares. And the wife test is, does she freak out? And the answer is yes, she freaks out because Tesla went down all the time. Over the last 5 years, it was horrible. And so that's bad. And you basically need to give your wife something, right? She has to say, like, you can't just take all our money and put it in Tesla. And so basically Pioneer Alpha is designed to, yes, you're giving up some of the upside, but you're buying yourself a lot of security to the downside compared to a raw portfolio. And you basically, if you have excess returns, they're being stored to deliver that continuous week by week appreciation, as long as the buffer, does its job and is still positive, or the portfolio is going up. And that buffer for you guys, if you're like high risk, thrill seeking dudes and you're 21, you say this is stupid, this is boring. But if you have a family or you want to have more reliable returns, or you have to discuss these things with a spouse, you will appreciate it. And a lot of people are like that. A lot of people who are not fanatic Tesla fans are like that, right? They say, can you just make me more money, but don't drive me crazy. And I think this is probably the most important financial innovation we can make in the age of AGI. Of course, this is the first time we are doing it, so there will be more volatility, but over time, I think we can nail it. And if we can continuously deliver 30% or between 30 and 45% a year, you know what that means. It would be like the best thing ever, actually. So that's the mission. And we built this whole thing out over the last 6 months and tested it, and it works pretty well so far. Yeah, and there will be more. And I'm only allowed to talk with Americans about it. And it's an LLC, it's an American investment vehicle. Not because we can't do that in other countries in the EU or something, but because we can't talk about it. It's a marketing regulation thing. Only the United States allows to talk about it in public. So that's kind of what it is. Very interesting stuff. And of course, my objective, by the way, since we are the Pioneer Academy, I can show you behind the scenes what's going on. For me, this is like definitely like an investment. So I'm not making any money anytime soon on this. I just believe we have to do it. If it works, of course, we'll have some of the excess can go back into the Pioneer Reserve. And my plan is if you can do that, you can actually take that capital to launch more and more of these things with a pre-funded buffer. So then you can really build something very big. That's the idea. So what do we have here? When will Pioneer Alpha reach Kardashev 3? Bhakti 3. Ooh, Bhakti 3 is going to take a long time. This is like very ambitious. Kardashev 3 before Bhakti 3. Goal is to index to themes that will change the world so we don't get caught short on the speed of change. Exactly, Philip. Basically, it's a fire and forget strategy. It's like, dudes, if you have heard about AGI and all these killer themes, but don't feel you want to just stay on top of it all the time with all your money at stake, Pioneer Alpha is like a shortcut. That's the idea. So like a stretch from MicroStrategy, but for stocks. Exactly, Dr. Fish. Dr. Fish is very smart. I got these ideas in my large CERN Basher session over MicroStrategy where we discussed MicroStrategy. And I was very impressed by this whole thing. And I think what we are doing is a little more substantive because not just based on Bitcoin, it's based on the entire future. But yeah, Michael Saylor was definitely an inspiration in how he re-engineered the risk curve. And that's going to be very cool. So that's the plan here. Let's go into the last part of this session and talk about the Pioneer Academy just quickly. Pioneer Lands. And any questions we have on that side of the equation. Let's see if there's anything. This is like, we have to learn how to push this actually out. This is done. Labor share of income. Are these all new questions? This is a lot of new questions. Ooh. Let's go here. Politics, my favorite. Is Europe and Germany still a smart place to build wealth long term? That's a tricky question. I'm being put on the spot here by Lucas. But of course, a very good question. Can I expand this? Is this the next question? Okay. I'm Lucas, I'm 25 years old and have been self-employed for 6 years. I found and operate 2 German GmbHs, including a holding company in the AGI company, AI agency. It's a very tricky question. I think in general, when I look at taxes, for example, the United States has a lot of advantages. I don't know if you even know that, if you're American, that if you don't work, if you don't have any income, only capital gains, that capital gains are tax-free up to $60,000 roughly a year. It's crazy. You don't pay taxes. You should look it up. It's crazy. But it's important that you don't have any other income, which is like very prescient, probably unintended, but prescient. I think in Europe, there are very attractive, countries like Estonia, for example, or Sweden. By the way, Sweden is like the biggest secret tax haven ever, if you're an investor. But I think Europe will be a battle. It will be a battle where I think it's inevitable, and that's one piece of Pioneer Lands, by the way. We have to fight for our rights, depending on the country. Look at what the Netherlands just did. They planned this insane unrealized capital gains tax, and the pushback was so hard that they dropped it. So I think in Europe, you are at risk that some crazy people are going to do really bad things. And I think what Europeans have to learn, they have to become more like Americans and understand you have to fight for your life. When you're in America and it's about politics, I don't know, people, it's a different energy. People feel like they have to fight for their life, which is absolutely correct, by the way. But they do fight for their life. Look at the last election. It was like crazy. I was there. Everyone was like freaking out, which I think is a good thing. And in Europe, they take it a little too casually sometimes. So I think Europeans have to learn that you have to own your own stuff and say, like, I have my money, I have my companies. You need to invest in politics, especially if you have a little money, if you're an entrepreneur. Connect to other entrepreneurs, go to Pioneer Lands, help us build out these networks, and we need to, organize. Politics is just something you can't stay out, especially when it comes to taxation, but also all kinds of other things. You need to get involved, and you can. Not just, whatever, hanging up posters. I mean, more organized, especially with entrepreneurs, especially with investors. There's a lot of things you can do. So this is not going to be free if you stay in Europe. And you can't really rely on any other country. Look at Dubai. I was just there, by the way, United Arab Emirates. I mean, they're in a bad situation right now. So I think there is no easy cheat code in the world where it's like the perfect country somewhere. I think in the United States, you have a lot of issues too. There's a lot of political uncertainty. Of course, the framework for investment and everything is better in the United States, but it needs to be fought for and upheld all the time. And the same is true in Europe. In Europe, a lot of only that people have to understand this better in Europe, in my opinion. So long story short, I think Europe has tremendous assets on a civilizational scale, but the fight is a little harder politically. So I remain bullish on all the Western countries, but it's definitely going to be a fight across all of them. And then inside Europe, yeah, you can be tactically smart, like find the country that's the best, effort, risk, return situation. I'm not sure Germany is the best balance, but it depends on your personal connections. Too bad I'm in Israel. Ooh. I should diversify some from my 98% Tesla portfolio. Well, Israel is also not the most stable place. I don't know that Israel is very safe. Joe, are you calling for a 50% haircut on Tesla? So, Chris, what I mean is, I think the market could totally crash now, very soon. I'm not saying it will. I'm just saying the Iran situation is much worse than the market priced in, or at least the risk profile is changing in real time. So I would be very concerned. If the market crashes, let's say 10%, Tesla's going to crash 20. Yeah, I think if the market goes down 10%, we are at 300, 310, 320 maybe for Tesla. Absolutely. And if Tesla then sees any kind of delay on robotaxi, that could be very bad, depending how bad it gets. But of course, the opposite can also be true. Here, Philip says, Americans are pioneers, it's in the culture. That is true. But don't forget, Americans are Europeans, so should be in European culture too. Yeah, Dr. Fish, I feel a little sorry. Like, Israel must be tough right now, very tough. So, and I don't think it's gonna get much better anytime soon. Even regardless of what happens, I think Israel is like, I think it's probably a hot spot. Remains a hot spot. So, what else do we have here? How can the Pioneer Academy create the Pioneer civilization? Ooh, that's my question. I put this in. That was the first question. To answer my own question, I would make it quick. I just think the most important thing is in this crazy time, and I'm mostly talking about the AGI thing, not just the wars, but we live in a very crazy time, guys. I hope you realize it, but you're here. You probably know that. That's why we have Pioneer Lands. Pioneer Lands is not just some crazy plan I have. Pioneer Lands is mostly about recognizing that we need a crazy plan, and we need to figure that out together by training our brains to see more stuff, to have more intelligent conversations, to learn to think and converse like reality pioneers, reality engineers, where, when you see a complex situation like Iran, when you see the job loss situation, when you see SpaceX, that we learn to be a little bit more like engineers, right? Instead of tribal or something. We should have our opinions and then present scenarios to each other. It's like, I think this and this and this is going to happen with these probabilities. And then the other person says, well, I don't think so. I think the probabilities are different, or I think the scenarios are different. And then you can have a debate. It's like, why do you think that? Instead of just screaming all day long or not doing something smart. There was never a time in history where this pays off more than now, because we can convert these insights and these best scenarios we identify into trades, for example, and just get paid for it, massive amounts of money. And we can also start then creating things, by the way. And the Pioneer Academy is all about instilling that culture. Like, can we just be reality engineers? Can we just be smart and use our collective minds to do that? And of course, create a culture of trust between us, so we don't think everyone is ripping each other off, but we do it collectively for the benefit of all of us. So it's not too complicated, but it's missing. Oli T, probably. Baden, I assume that means Baden-Württemberg. Or Baden-Baden, who knows? So what else do we have? We have a lot of new questions here. Wow. These are actually all new questions. Which comes first, the end of the Iran war or robotaxi launched? That's a very smart question. That is a very smart question. That is a very important question. Some say the war will last at least 3 more months. Others say that robotaxi April launch is dubious. Both could have similar time frames, in my opinion, but I'm guessing. Well, basically, this question is impossible to answer because you are asking me two of the most important questions, which are both completely hard to predict, independent of each other. So that makes this incredibly complicated. This is a double complex bet. The Iran war is only important at this point, as I elaborated before, I think the odds of an end of the Iran war have dropped dramatically, like a quick end, because Iran doesn't want to end it anymore. Trump doesn't look like he wants to end it. And now they're pushing each other into not ending it. And we also have to understand, this is not just a poker game where, it's not literally a poker game where two dudes sit there at the table. These are not two dudes. These are two countries with enormous networks and lobbyists and propagandists and power struggles inside the country. So you're not even at liberty to do something on both sides, right? They're all under a lot of pressure. And the more you have actually war going on, the more you can't get out. So I think it just looks super dark. That's what I think on Iran. And that means, unfortunately, the end might not be in sight. Robotaxi. And why is this important? Because, but here's the good news about Iran for us, right, as market people. All it takes is for the market to recognize that and reprice the market and crash it. Because at that moment, there's only upside. So this is very important. If it drags on forever, it's not that the market goes down forever. I think we are talking about a repricing of the market very rapidly. If Trump doesn't end the war tomorrow, which he can't, the odds of more crashing in the markets is high. How much it crashes, I don't know. You have to talk to oil experts and macro experts who can price you that, and even they don't probably know. But I think it's going to be 5 to 15%, something like that, which means Tesla can go down a lot more. And I think theoretically that should happen very quickly, because the market is not going to wait and get dragged down with the war. They're going to say, wait a moment, we were wrong on Taco. Let's reprice the whole thing now. And then you crash. And once you crash, you're in a war market. And in a war market, everyone has already priced it in. So, okay, fine. Now we are slowly grinding up again. So, and then I don't think the market, the war is going to end anytime soon, which means oil stays up, but it doesn't matter. The market still will grind up. Then we have it out of the system, the whole thing. I think that's the most likely outcome here. And then on the robotaxi launch, of course, the double whammy for Tesla would be this happens next week. We go down, stay down, grinds very slowly up. And then some bad news on robotaxis happen. Then we are 220. But these are completely independent questions. And I think on robotaxi, I do, like, of course, it's guesswork. But when I look at Cybercab, when I look at how they start churning them out and no one even brings any problems up, Elon double down on 14.3 coming out in a couple of weeks, coinciding with Cybercab. I don't know. I think April is going to be good. You also have to consider that not everyone is like me, of these investors, of the Tesla investors. Like, most people don't expect a crazy inflection point. So it's not that the stock price is in, if this thing doesn't go to 2,000 robotaxis by May, we crash the stock. I think all the stock needs to see to not crash is, okay, we have movement. We have a dozen Cybercabs deployed. Now we have 80 Cybercabs deployed. That's more than enough to stabilize the stock or even get it up. It's not going to reprice Tesla. That's only going to happen when I'm right, like the 2,000, 3,000, 10,000 Cybercabs. But if you get to dozens and then hundreds, that's more than enough to drive the stock up a little bit and stabilize it. So in order to really crash the stock, we would need to see a total delay. Like in April, Tesla comes like, oops, no Cybercab deployment. Then the stock is down a few percent. Then in May, it's like, yeah, no Cybercab deployment. And then it gets a little sketchy. So I just don't think they're going to screw us like that. Let's see. I mean, I think we should try and compare the pull out from last year, 12-day war, because the targets and ways of fighting are the same. Well, Dr. Fish, well, if I was the president, I would do it. You would have my, but something is not working there. We should have pulled out way, like 10 days ago. So the fact that we didn't is a very bad sign. What about Solana, I assume, Limitless? I'm actually not bullish on Solana, because people are too techy about Solana. They think, oh, it's better than Ethereum. But this is not about being better. It's about ecosystem and adoption by banks. And they're all betting. I mean, all the big banks are using Ethereum for securitization and on chain. So I think Ethereum just, you don't, and downtime, look at downtime. You need systems that are hugely reliable, and Solana is just not as reliable as Ethereum. So I think it's too geeky to say Solana is hot. That doesn't mean it's, I think Solana is just going to run with Bitcoin, Ethereum at a higher beta. I'm just, from a substantive perspective, more bullish on Ethereum. If you want the truth, listen to James from Advanced Dances. He sends out a private email explaining Joe and his little scam. What is that? That sounds very interesting. Invest answers. Joe, it's confusing to claim a 50% drop. What do you mean? Chris, what do you mean confusing? I'm saying I'm not saying a 50% drop. I'm saying if the market drops like this, and robotaxi has a major problem, yeah, we could see, no, not 50% from here, but we could see a significant drop. That's what I'm saying. Oh, here, next question. What does a mayor do? Here, we just launched the cities, by the way, in case you didn't see that. If you go to the cities app, if you're a citizen, I think you need to be a citizen, you can run for mayor and then own your city, by the way. That's a lot of fun. You should do it. We are building out the cities. What we have here? Will Cybercab have a steering wheel? Well, that's what we have to ask Fazat. Is the need for space chips impacted by chips performing matrix multiplication using photonic crystals based upon programmable RAM matters? That's an interesting question. Is the need for space chips impacted by chips performing matrix multiplication using, this is very geeky, this question. I don't think it's impacted by that. How do I actually see the full question? Is she present? Damn, I don't even know how to use this. How do I see the full question? I think this makes it too complicated. The need for space chips is based on a bottleneck in chip production that Elon outlined. So we need to produce them ourselves as Tesla and SpaceX. It's that simple. Also, there's a huge opportunity in producing these chips because it's vertical integration. They need to fulfill a very specific task that is easy to do. We need a new positive narrative quickly. Otherwise, I agree a market correction will happen. Philip, do you mean like on the market a narrative, or do you mean on Tesla? I think on Tesla, all we need is robotaxi. That's what we need. I do not think Tesla can drive up its share price through more visionary stuff. It's not the time for that. Terafab is not going to negatively or positively impact this. Even new Optimus updates are not going to increase it too much. Now is the time to show Cybercab. It's really important. Cybercab is a very important moment for Tesla because you know how it is. We have not seen any breakthrough for 5 years. And everyone understands on a first principle level, everything Elon is doing is like amazing, but he has to show that he can deliver, and now it's time to deliver. If he delivers, all the other crazy things get revalidated. So it's not just the cash flow from robotaxi, it's also a massive reinvigoration of Optimus, of Terafab, of the whole thing, because now he delivers. You know how it is. And if he doesn't, all of that stuff will get massively discounted. That's the issue. Lee says, thanks for Iran update. Hope when you do your next deep dive, you consider the possibility of Iranian collapse, not capitulation, but disintegration. Well, I'm always considering all options. I'm just trying to triangulate what's the most likely outcomes. And societies like that don't easily collapse, right? This is not Venezuela. It's not Iraq. This is a very old and highly established, deeply entrenched situation and culture. So they're very hard to just collapse in this situation. So that's my concern. You're not collapsing them too easily. Countries are very different. It's like North Korea. If you attack them, they're not going to collapse anytime soon if you do that. Like, let's forget about the nukes for a second. But These are extremely resilient things, which is very different from secular, non-ideological dictators in the Middle East or in South America. I think no one gives a shit in Venezuela, for example. If you remove the leader, this is a very different situation. Iran is very ideological, as we know. It's very Shiite, Islamic. They have been there for a long time. And the infiltration goes very deep. The narrative against the United States and Israel goes very deep. So you can't just randomly collapse these countries. It takes a lot, in my opinion. And also the next question is, should you just randomly bet on that? I mean, this is not a game, right? That irritates me about what I see. Like, it seems like people don't think this through. It's like, oh, I'm sure they're going to collapse. We need scenario analysis and we need realistic percentages on that. Of course, we can have hopes for outcomes, but that doesn't help us. Here's another interesting question. Options Alpha. Could you offer advice for what principles I should follow for closing options at a loss? I just started trading options last month and got a little sloppy with always working out and ended up losing 12 shares to buy back 3 puts. The worst possible time because I got scared. All my money in. Ooh. Well, my advice was be extremely cautious with options when you're new. Like I'm deeply engaged with options for how long? I can't even for 15 years now, and I had very bad experience in between, and only in the last 7 years did I get really good at it. The first 8 years were very bad. So options are extremely dangerous because it's very easy to make enormous amounts of money with options. Everyone makes enormous amounts with options and then gets sloppy and then loses everything, right? That's the problem. So it's very hard to explain that because it's much more than just knowing. You need to go through it. It's like emotional resilience, and you have to learn. At least that's how I trade. Like, people do different things with options. I have a very specific way of trading options. And my way of trading options is that I'm actually not trading options. I am engineering return scaffolding around my prediction of the future. So I'm saying this is the future I'm seeing. Iran is a great example because I was actually wrong on the taco. So I construct my prediction of the future, and then all I do is I use options for maximizing or optimizing my risk return structure around that scenario of the future scenario. If I say there is an unusual opportunity here where the market misprices something. I thought that's how I lost money on Friday. I thought taco is inevitable because not doing a taco is insane. And therefore I was betting on Trump doing a taco, which would have led to a rally. And because he didn't do that, I was wrong. And I took a lot of these options off the table on Friday, even though I lost money, but I don't want to lose more money. And then people said, oh, Joe, selling the bottom, blah, blah. Like, dudes, it's not about that. You can never chase the market. That's a huge mistake. You have to have your thesis and your prediction of the future. And at the millisecond, even if nothing happens, you realize you're wrong, you have to take it off the table. You have to reposition yourself as quickly as possible. It doesn't matter if you lost money or made money. Sometimes I'm wrong and I make money. Because when I realize I'm wrong, the market doesn't yet know I'm wrong. And then I make money, I'm still taking everything off. So it's not about the market and how the options behave. It's about the moment in time where you realize you're wrong or you're right. And then you have to restructure it. So you have to be not reactive to prices. That's very important. Where the government can rear-end it. If the war escalates and drags on into year-end, will hold back Tesla share price even if they scale cyber. That's a very important question. My take on it is, it's not even the question what the Iran war does exactly. The question is what the market does in reaction to that. And I think we are now at this inflection point where a lot of analysts realized that taco is not happening, because most of the institutional analysts were on my side. I didn't even know that in the beginning, but I see it more and more now. They all said taco is happening. I think now it dawns on them it might not be happening. And that means they restructure the whole projection of the future and say this could just completely escalate. And therefore, they have to drop the market soon, in my opinion, unless actually something happens. And if that happens, we just crash very quickly and then stop crashing and then grind higher. Okay. And then we just, start from there again. If you're at 300 with Tesla or something, and then if cybercap actually happens and we scale to 10,000, I think we, I don't know if that means we are going to 800 instead of 900 or 700 instead of 800. I don't know. I don't think so. So I think if we scale to 10,000 cybercaps by year end, that's so massive that this doesn't matter if we are now at 400 or 300. So I do not think, here's my short answer, I do not think anything Iran short of like nuclear weapons or something would have any impact strategically on Tesla's stock behavior this year if we get to the cybercap scale. How about covered calls on Tesla? Well, Digital Blade, California. I think Nick does that a lot. I'm not doing it at all because I think the upside risk is just too big. Like, what if Iran actually stops? Then you see Tesla going up 10%. What if there is a surprise? I mean, how do you play covered calls? Like maybe for the next 2 weeks, you're kind of safe on the cybercap side. But we're always talking about cybercap being delayed in April. Well, there's also a very reasonable chance that the opposite is true. And mid of April, some crazy surprise happens. So I think for me, it's not, I mean, maybe for the next 2 weeks, maybe covered calls make sense. But beyond that, it's just too risky, in my opinion. Can't Trump blackmail NATO to keep the ships safe, if not to stop fund NATO or something? I mean, of course, he can do all kinds of things, but these are complicated, giant organizations. So I know this is all too, this all takes very long time to do all these things, right? That's the problem. But you could roll the covered call too. You could roll the covered call. I mean, it depends how it works out, right? If you get totally, if the stock goes up 10% in one day, it's just a very bad situation you're in. Didn't Trump say he will stop the war within a week or two? Well, yeah, he said this all the time. It's too late for that. Why do you tell him what he's going to do outside of that? I mean, what's your point, Matt? Like, do you think he's going to stop it or not? Thanks. I feel the same for the time period. Yes. I mean, we can speculate all day long about what Trump really wants to do, but factually, if he wanted to stop the war quickly, he should have done it by now. And the fact that he didn't, in my opinion, makes it much more likely that he won't. You put it like that. That's the problem. And regardless what he does, by the way, at the moment where the market stops believing in taco, it has to crash because they have to reprice the entire risk, tail risk. Right now, the market does not price in long-term super elevated oil. And because they all believed it's going to taco, because that's Trump's pattern in the past. You were always right betting on taco, on the tariffs, on Greenland, on Iran last year. And now this is falling apart. So even if Trump continues and then tacos in 2 weeks, it's too late. Then the market probably has crashed. I mean, then it would be up again, but. I know, Matt, I think you're right. Matt says his ass is on the line if he doesn't stop it and he doesn't. But I think it's a waste of our brain power to try to figure out what's going on in his brain, because I have no idea what's going on. We can just observe from the outside. And the idea that someone is just going to do something just because if he wouldn't, he would be finished, mostly doesn't work out. People are just finished sometimes. I mean, Philip, so all these ripple effects of oil, that's what I mean. That's why the market would crash, exactly because of that. It all, ties into the same narrative. It's like the market right now believes this is not a big deal. And that means they believe taco coming. But now everyone has doubt. Like the fact that I tacoed out on my own taco means everyone is close to tacoing out, right? They're all like getting nervous now. And it's not about what will happen, it's about scenarios. If you build in a 0% scenario that we are still in a total war in December, and then you have to reprice and say like, oh, actually there is a real risk, all these things happen. Then we're like, okay, then oil is high, then inflation is high, then the Fed can't cut, has to raise rates, whatever, like all these, then everything is like happening, and that's the problem. So, what do we have here? Let's do two more. Interesting. Would you recommend the implementation of an alpha role in a high capital gains environment? What I can recommend to everyone, two things. Number one, take your Google Sheets and model out your net returns based on different scenarios, because I can, depends on the exact capital gains environment. And you just have to simulate it. You have to model it out once. Okay, if I hold Tesla, if I make gross returns 40% a year, and with Alpha Roll I make 50% in my model, whatever. I just model it out. If I make 40% long-term capital gains and realize after 5 years, versus making 50% and realizing every year, half of it, whatever, what does it mean based on your taxes? And then you will see the outcome. In my experience and what I see with institutionals, high returns beat taxes in most, nearly always. Taxes are overrated. If you have a good strategy, if you have high confidence, these strategies make you so much more money that paying more taxes on it mostly is worth it. And it's very important to just see it and then get your mind free of it, like once you see what actually goes on, because it depends on your situation and how confident you are in your alpha roll strategy. Because trying to save taxes by staying poorer is often not the right strategy. Okay, this is important. Will U.S. labor share of income fall below 50% by 2030? In 2000, workers received 56.6% of U.S. gross domestic income. By 2024, it had fallen to 51%, drop of 4.7 percentage points in 24 years at current GDP of around 30 trillion. How do I even see this full question? Well, in general, two things important. I think AI will absolutely decimate white collar work. And white collar work is much bigger than blue collar work as a share of the economy. It will be complete devastation starting end of this year, going really hard in 2027 and reaching very concerning levels in 2028 with huge political impact, in my opinion, on the election. Number two, this will not be well depicted or reflected in unemployment, for example, because the unemployment rate, when you look at how this is being calculated, is totally stupid. This is one of the dumbest indicators ever, because when they call people to find out if they're unemployed, they ask them if they had done anything, not if they have a W-2 job or something. Did you do anything where you made money last week or something like that? So any gig worker, anyone who finds a consulting gig or something is basically employed. which means if you would lay off everyone and they all just try to survive, they're all still employed, which means unemployment is a very stupid indicator that's completely distorting reality. So hard to see actually in the statistics, but there is no doubt in my mind that there will be a completely massive wipeout of jobs. Reza Pahlavi, Shah's son, lives in Potomac, Maryland. Tells Iranians safe times for strikes and protests. Israel warns in Persian online. Joe, if you could sell 20% of your Tesla back in a tax-free trading account, would you sell 20% hoping to buy back in after a crash? It depends on your exposure. I'm still fully in my core position. I basically just took off across all positions 20% because I was above the core position. So I'm still heavily in Tesla. And so it depends a little bit on your exposure, right? If you have, if you have $1 million and you are invested with $1 million right now, sure, it might be worth taking some off the table, in my opinion. You always want to think in scenarios like, what if I'm wrong? What if like Trump tomorrow says it's over and then everything goes up 5%? I think it's worth it to miss out on 5% up, even 10% up with 20% of your position, because you're still getting back in if the entire situation changes. You're not losing out on that much. And if it goes down, you're very happy because then you have dry powder. My neighbor spoke to his family in Iran. The citizens are happy. We are there. Oh, yeah, sure. Thank you, Joe, for all you do. Well, thank you, guys. Yeah, it's hard to talk about Iran rationally because a lot of people are just irrational. I don't know what's wrong with people. Why are you so irrational? We have to learn to see the world as it is. And we have to learn to see reality as good as we can. And there's a certain process to it. You have to have discussions, think through the noise, and don't listen to propaganda. It's just not helpful. MicroStrategy. Well, I did yesterday a video on Bitcoin or on crypto and MicroStrategy. What's very interesting compared to Tesla or NVIDIA or any kind of normal stock, when you look at crypto, is that the analysts and the people talking about crypto, none of them has any kind of idea what they're talking about. It's very fascinating to me. They're all like, there is no substance to any prediction, in my opinion. So I had to learn to form my own opinion on a very much thinner level of like evidence than on Tesla or any normal stock. But generally, all I can say that has substance about crypto is that all the hard fundamental metrics are going up like crazy. Institutional adoption of Ethereum, institutional adoption of Bitcoin, new wallets, all kinds of stuff is going up while the price is crashing. And there is an explanation why the price is crashing, because there was this deleveraging event in October 10th. Tom Lee is like discussing that. So I do think it's an attractive setup. And the way crypto behaved throughout Iran is also very encouraging because it went up when everything else went down. So I think on multiple levels, the tactical behavior throughout Iran, the comparison, how it behaved towards, in comparison to gold, that it's now very cheap and attractive towards, in comparison to gold, and the fundamental improvement and the technical deterioration make crypto very attractive. When this turns around, I don't know. But I'm actually outside Pioneer Alpha pretty invested in crypto. And I just double down, actually significantly. But these are very long-term. This is not trading. This is very long-term exposure. And so the question then is, what about MicroStrategy? I mean, because I'm using perpetuals, futures and stuff like that. I'm not using too much MicroStrategy. I have a little bit of MicroStrategy in Pioneer Alpha in the portfolio. I do think in normal portfolios, I also don't have a way to put crypto into like spot crypto, like direct crypto holdings or even futures into Pioneer Alpha for technical reasons, for institutional reasons. So the only way to get good exposure to crypto or Bitcoin is through MicroStrategy. And I think it's pretty attractive. Personally, I still prefer to be directly in it, but now, that we institutionalize more, I see also why MicroStrategy is so much easier to handle and so much easier to get compliance. So MicroStrategy is probably an attractive way if you are bullish on crypto or Bitcoin specifically, and I am. Okay, very good. I think we wrap it up for today. That was a long session, but fun as always. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Feel free to ask your questions on pioneerlands.org. You can always go to the Pioneer Academy and ask your questions, and then I will answer it next Sunday. I hope that was enjoyable, and see you very soon. Mm-hmm.